You're just not leadership material. Those words from my boss 18 months ago almost destroyed me. Today, he called begging me to come back as his boss. I'm Emily, and if you've ever been told you're too soft or too nice to lead, this story will change everything you think about real leadership. Hit subscribe because you need to see how the biggest rejection of my life became my greatest victory. Let's start with the day that almost broke me. The fluorescent lights of the Denver office building hummed overhead as I sat in the sterile conference room, my hands folded tightly in my lap. The September afternoon sun struggled to penetrate the tinted windows, casting long shadows across the polished table where my career dreams were about to be shattered. Emily, we've decided to go with Marcus for the senior analyst position, David Chen, my team lead, said without looking up from his notes. His voice was flat, businesslike, as if he was reading off a grocery list rather than delivering news that would change everything for me. I felt my stomach drop. For 6 months, I had worked 60-hour weeks, arriving at the office before sunrise and leaving long after the cleaning crew had finished their rounds. I had streamlined our client reporting process, saving the company thousands of dollars in man-hours. I had mentored 3 junior analysts, helping them exceed their performance targets. I thought I had proven myself worthy of advancement at Richardson Financial Group. I don't understand, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. My performance reviews have been outstanding. The Henderson account project I led exceeded expectations by 30%. David finally looked up, his dark eyes cold and dismissive. Emily, you're a great individual contributor, but leadership requires more than just good work. You need presence, authority, the ability to command respect. He leaned back in his chair, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Frankly, you're just not leadership material. You're too soft, too accommodating. In this business, clients need to see strength, not someone who asks please and thank you every 5 minutes. The words hit me like a physical blow. I had always prided myself on being collaborative, on treating people with respect and kindness. I thought these were strengths, not weaknesses. My face burned with embarrassment as I realized that my colleagues probably saw me the same way David did, as weak, as someone who couldn't handle the pressure of real responsibility. Marcus has that natural leadership presence, David continued, seemingly oblivious to my distress. He speaks up in meetings, challenges ideas, makes tough decisions. That's what we need in a senior role. I wanted to argue, to point out that Marcus had been with the company for only 4 months while I had been there for 3 years. I wanted to mention that half of his challenging ideas in meetings were actually suggestions I had made to him privately, which he then presented as his own. But the words stuck in my throat like bitter pills I couldn't swallow. Of course, we value your contributions, David added, his tone now patronizing. You'll continue to be an important part of the team. We're actually giving you a small raise, 2%, to recognize your hard work. 2%. After 3 years of dedication, of sacrificing evenings and weekends, of putting the company's needs before my own, I was worth a 2% raise while Marcus, who spent half his time schmoozing with clients over expensive lunches, got the promotion I had earned. I somehow managed to nod and mumble my thanks before excusing myself from the room. The walk back to my desk felt like a marathon, each step heavier than the last. My coworkers' eyes followed me, and I wondered if they could see the defeat written across my face. Did they all agree with David's assessment? Did they see me as nothing more than a glorified assistant? Someone who could handle the grunt work but never lead? That evening, I sat in my small apartment in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, staring out at the city lights through my kitchen window. The Denver skyline looked different somehow, less full of possibility than it had that morning. I had moved here from Ohio 5 years ago with such high hopes, convinced that my business degree and natural work ethic would be enough to build the career I had always dreamed of. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. How did the meeting go, honey? Are you going to be my daughter, the executive? I couldn't bring myself to respond. How could I explain that I wasn't leadership material, that I was too soft, too accommodating? How could I tell her that her belief in me had been misplaced? I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop, scrolling through job listings with little enthusiasm. The descriptions all seemed to blur together. Seeking dynamic leader, must have executive presence, looking for someone who can drive results. Every posting seemed to reinforce David's words, reminding me of everything I apparently wasn't. As I closed the laptop and prepared for bed, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. My reflection looked tired, defeated, smaller somehow than it had that morning. I had always been proud of my appearance, professional but approachable, confident but not intimidating. Now I wondered if that was the problem. Maybe I needed to be more like Marcus, more aggressive, more willing to step on others to get ahead. But even as I thought it, something inside me rebelled against the idea. I had seen what that approach did to people, how it created toxic work environments where fear replaced respect. I had watched talented people leave companies because they couldn't stand the constant pressure and backstabbing. Is that really what leadership looked like? Is that what I needed to become? The questions followed me into an uneasy sleep, where I dreamed of conference rooms and disapproving faces, of always being the one asked to take notes while others made the decisions that mattered. 3 weeks after that devastating meeting, I was going through the motions of my daily routine when everything changed. I was reviewing quarterly reports, my enthusiasm for the work dimmed by the constant reminder that I was apparently destined to remain in the same role forever, when my phone rang. "Emily, this is Jennifer Walsh from Innovative Solutions Corp. I got your name from Maria Santos. She spoke very highly of your work when you helped her transition from Richardson Financial last year." I remembered Maria well. She had been a senior consultant who had left Richardson Financial to start her own consulting firm. During her final weeks, I had worked closely with her to ensure a smooth handoff of her clients. Even though it meant extra hours and stress for me, I had done it because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected anything in return. "I'm calling because we have an opportunity that might interest you," Jennifer continued. "We're looking for someone to lead our new client services division. Maria told me you have exactly the kind of leadership approach we're looking for: collaborative, results-driven, and genuinely invested in people's success." Leadership approach. The words David had used to dismiss me were now being used to describe exactly what someone else wanted. I felt a flutter of hope in my chest, something I hadn't experienced in weeks. "I'd love to hear more about the opportunity," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the excitement building inside me. "Why don't we meet for coffee tomorrow? I think you'll be impressed with what we're building here." The next day, I found myself sitting in a bustling coffee shop in Lodo, Denver's lower downtown district. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of change. Jennifer turned out to be a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile that immediately put me at ease. "Maria told me about the Henderson account project you led," Jennifer said as we settled into comfortable chairs by the window. "She said you increased client satisfaction by 40% while reducing costs. That's exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need." I felt my cheeks warm with pride. Someone had noticed my work, had seen value in what I had accomplished. "I believe that when you treat people well, both clients and team members, the results speak for themselves," I said. "That's refreshing to hear," Jennifer replied. "Too many people in this industry think leadership means being the loudest voice in the room or the one who takes all the credit. We're looking for someone who understands that real leadership is about empowering others and creating an environment where everyone can do their best work." As Jennifer described the role, I felt my excitement growing. Innovative Solutions Corp was a mid-sized consulting firm that specialized in helping companies improve their operations and employee satisfaction. They had been growing rapidly and needed someone to build and lead a new division focused on client services excellence. The position would involve managing a team of 12 professionals, developing new service protocols, and working directly with our highest value clients, Jennifer explained. "It's a lot of responsibility, but based on what Maria told me about your work style, I think you'd thrive in this environment." The salary she mentioned was 30% higher than what I was making at Richardson Financial. But more importantly, it was a chance to prove that my approach to leadership could work, that being collaborative and respectful didn't make me weak. "I'm definitely interested," I said, trying to contain my enthusiasm. "When would you need someone to start? We're moving quickly on this. If you're interested, we'd like to bring you in for a full interview next week." You'd meet with our executive team and a few of the people you'd be working with. Walking back to my car after the meeting, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The downtown streets seemed more vibrant, the Colorado sunshine warmer on my face. For the first time since David's crushing words, I allowed myself to imagine a different future, one where my natural leadership style was seen as a strength rather than a weakness. That evening, I called my best friend Sarah, who lived in California, but had been my sounding board throughout my career struggles. This sounds incredible, she said, after I told her about the opportunity. You've always had amazing leadership instincts. Remember in college when you organized that study group that helped half our accounting class pass? Or when you coordinated that charity drive that raised more money than any previous year? You've always been a leader. Some people just couldn't see it. Her words reminded me of who I had been before David's assessment had shaken my confidence. I had always been the person others turned to for help, the one who could bring people together and make things happen. Maybe David was wrong. Maybe his definition of leadership was too narrow, too focused on domination rather than collaboration. The next week flew by as I prepared for the interview. I researched Innovative Solutions Corp extensively, studying their client base, their company culture, their recent projects. I prepared thoughtful questions about their goals for the new division and how they measured success. Most importantly, I prepared to be myself. Not the aggressive, dominating leader David seemed to think I needed to be, but the collaborative, people-focused leader I had always been. The morning of the interview, I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting my navy blue blazer and checking my appearance one final time. I looked professional, confident, ready. More importantly, I looked like myself, the version of myself who believed in her own abilities and wasn't afraid to show it. As I drove toward the Innovative Solutions Corp offices in the Denver Tech Center, I felt a sense of anticipation I hadn't experienced in months. This was my chance to prove that leadership came in many forms, that strength could be quiet and collaborative rather than loud and dominating. This was my chance to show that David Chen had been wrong about me, that I was indeed leadership material, just not the kind he recognized. The interview process at Innovative Solutions Corp was unlike anything I had experienced before. Instead of the typical interrogation-style questions I was used to, they asked me to present a case study of how I would approach building the new client services division. They wanted to see my thinking process, my leadership philosophy, and how I would handle real-world challenges. I presented a comprehensive plan that focused on building strong relationships with both clients and team members, creating clear communication channels, and establishing metrics that measured not just revenue, but client satisfaction and employee engagement. The executive team listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and nodding approvingly at my responses. "Your approach is exactly what we're looking for," said Robert Kim, the CEO. "We've seen too many companies focus solely on short-term profits at the expense of long-term relationships. Your philosophy aligns perfectly with our company values." 2 days later, Jennifer called with an offer. As I accepted the position, I felt a mixture of excitement and terror. This was everything I had hoped for, but it was also a massive responsibility. I would be leading a team of 12 experienced professionals, managing relationships with major clients, and building something entirely new from the ground up. My last day at Richardson Financial was awkward, to say the least. David seemed genuinely surprised that I was leaving, and even more surprised that I was taking a leadership role elsewhere. "I hope you know what you're doing," he said during our brief exit interview. "Leadership isn't just about being nice to people. You'll learn that quickly enough." I smiled politely and thanked him for the opportunity to work at Richardson Financial, though privately I was already planning to prove him wrong in the most satisfying way possible. My first month at Innovative Solutions Corp was a whirlwind of meetings, planning sessions, and getting to know my new team. The 12 professionals I was now responsible for were a diverse group, some with decades of experience, others relatively new to the industry. What they all had in common was a dedication to excellence and a frustration with the way client services had been handled in the past. "We're excited to have someone leading us who actually understands what we do," said Patricia, a senior consultant who had been with the company for 5 years. The previous structure had us reporting to someone in operations who saw us as a necessary evil rather than a strategic advantage. I spent my first few weeks listening more than talking, learning about each team member's strengths, challenges, and career goals. I discovered that Marcus, one of the senior analysts, had been struggling with a difficult client relationship that previous leadership had simply ignored. Lisa, a talented but introverted team member, had valuable insights about process improvement that had never been solicited or implemented. I want to understand not just what you do, but how you think we can do it better, I told them during our first team meeting. You're the experts in your areas, and I'm here to support you, remove obstacles, and help you succeed. The transformation was gradual but remarkable. When team members realized that their opinions were valued and their suggestions would be seriously considered, they began to contribute ideas and take ownership of their work in ways they never had before. Our client satisfaction scores began to improve within the first month, and by the end of the quarter, we had exceeded our targets by 15%. The real test came when we landed a major new client, a Fortune 500 company that was considering switching their entire consulting relationship to us. The contract was worth more than $2 million annually, and the pressure from the executive team was intense. This is make or break for the division, Robert told me during one of our weekly check-ins. If we can successfully onboard this client and deliver exceptional results, it will establish us as a major player in the market. If we fail, it could set us back years. I knew that the traditional approach would be to micromanage every aspect of the project, to double-check every deliverable, and to maintain tight control over all client communications. But I also knew that my team was capable of excellence if they were empowered to do their best work. Instead of hovering over their shoulders, I established clear expectations and deadlines, provided the resources they needed, and created regular check-in meetings where we could address challenges and celebrate successes. I made sure that each team member understood not just their specific responsibilities, but how their work contributed to the overall success of the project. I trust you to do what you do best, I told them. My job is to make sure you have everything you need to succeed and to remove any obstacles that get in your way. The results were better than I had dared to hope. The client was impressed not just with the quality of our work, but with the seamless collaboration and communication throughout the project. They specifically mentioned how refreshing it was to work with a team where everyone was clearly invested in the success of the project. 6 months into my role, I was invited to speak at a regional conference about innovative approaches to client services. As I stood on the stage, looking out at an audience of industry professionals, I thought about how different my life had become since that crushing meeting with David Chen. Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, I told the audience. It's about creating an environment where everyone's voice can be heard, where people feel valued and empowered to contribute their best work. When you treat people with respect and trust them to excel, they will exceed your expectations every time. The applause was genuine and enthusiastic, but more importantly, I saw several people in the audience taking notes, nodding in agreement. My approach to leadership was resonating with others in the industry, validating what I had always believed but had been made to doubt. That evening, I called my parents to share the news about my speaking engagement. My mother's pride was evident in her voice as she told me how she had always known I was meant for great things. "You've always had a gift for bringing out the best in people," she said. "I'm so proud of you for never giving up on yourself, even when others couldn't see what I could see." As I hung up the phone, I realized that the person who had needed to see my potential the most was me. David's words had temporarily shaken my confidence, but they had also forced me to examine what I truly believed about leadership and to find an environment where those beliefs could flourish. The scared, defeated woman who had left Richardson Financial was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true leadership came from strength, not weakness, but that strength could be quiet, collaborative, and deeply respectful of others. I had found my voice, and I was using it to help others find theirs. 1 year after joining Innovative Solutions Corp., I received an unexpected phone call that would bring my journey full circle. I was in my office reviewing proposals for expanding our client services division when my assistant buzzed in. "Emily, There's a David Chen online too. He says he's from Richardson Financial Group and that it's regarding a business opportunity. My heart skipped a beat. David Chen. The man who had told me I wasn't leadership material, who had dismissed my collaborative approach as weakness, was now calling me. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. Hello, David. This is Emily. Emily, great to hear from you. I hope you're doing well. His voice was different from what I remembered. Warmer, almost deferential. I've been hearing some impressive things about your work at Innovative Solutions Corp. Congratulations on your success there. Thank you, I replied, keeping my tone professional but curious. What can I do for you? Well, this is a bit awkward, but I'm calling because Richardson Financial is looking for a new director of client relations. We're restructuring our entire approach to client services. And frankly, we need someone with your expertise and leadership style. I almost laughed out loud. The same company that had deemed me unfit for a senior analyst position was now courting me for a director-level role. The irony was not lost on me. I'm flattered by the interest, I said carefully, but I'm very happy in my current role. We've built something special here at Innovative Solutions Corp. I understand, and I don't blame you for being skeptical. But Emily, I want to be honest with you. I made a mistake when you were here. I was focused on a very narrow definition of leadership, and I failed to recognize the value of your approach. Over the past year, I've watched what you've accomplished, and I've had to admit that I was wrong. The admission hung in the air between us. This was the moment I had fantasized about during those dark weeks after being passed over for promotion. David Chen acknowledging that he had misjudged me. But now that it was happening, I felt less satisfaction than I had expected. Instead, I felt a kind of professional sadness for all the potential that had been wasted. All the opportunities that had been lost because of narrow thinking. I appreciate you saying that, David, I said. But I'm curious, what changed your mind? Marcus left the company 6 months ago, he admitted. The aggressive leadership style I thought we needed actually drove away several of our best clients. We lost the Henderson account, the one you had built such a strong relationship with. They specifically mentioned that they missed working with you. I remembered the Henderson account well. It had been one of my proudest achievements at Richardson Financial, and I had been sorry to leave that relationship behind. Hearing that they had missed working with me was gratifying, but it also highlighted the cost of short-sighted leadership decisions. We're offering a substantial package, David continued. Director-level position, 40% increase over your current salary, full benefits, and the authority to rebuild our client services approach from the ground up. You'd report directly to the VP level, and you'd have complete autonomy over your division. It was an impressive offer, one that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. But as I listened to David's pitch, I realized that my priorities had changed. Money and titles were important, but they weren't everything. I had found something at Innovative Solutions Corp that was more valuable. A culture that aligned with my values, a team that trusted and respected me, and the opportunity to build something meaningful. David, I'm honored by the offer, but I'm going to have to decline. I've built something here that I'm proud of, and I'm not ready to leave it behind. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I understand, he said finally. I had to try, but I respect your decision. For what it's worth, I think Innovative Solutions Corp is lucky to have you. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. The validation was nice, but it was also confirmation of something I had already come to understand, that my worth as a leader wasn't determined by what David Chen or anyone else thought of me. It was determined by the results I achieved, the relationships I built, and the positive impact I had on the people around me. That afternoon, I shared the news with my team during our weekly meeting. Their reaction was immediate and unanimous. They were thrilled that I had turned down the offer and relieved that I wasn't leaving. You've created something special here, said Patricia. We've never had a leader who invested in us the way you do. The thought of losing that was terrifying. Plus, added Marcus with a grin, we just got confirmation that other companies are actively trying to poach our boss. That means we're working for someone who's in high demand, which makes us look pretty good too. The laughter that followed was warm and genuine, the kind that only comes from a team that truly enjoys working together. I looked around the room at these 12 professionals who had become more than just colleagues. They were partners in building something meaningful, something that proved that leadership could be both effective and humane. 6 months later, I was promoted to Vice President of Client Services, with responsibility for expanding our approach company-wide. The division I had built had become the model for how Innovative Solutions Corp wanted to approach all client relationships. Our client retention rate was the highest in the industry, our employee satisfaction scores were off the charts, and our revenue growth was consistently exceeding projections. At the company's annual awards dinner, Robert Kim presented me with the Leadership Excellence Award, an honor that had never been given to someone with less than 10 years of experience at the company. "Emily has shown us that leadership isn't about commanding from above," he said as he presented the award. "It's about inspiring from within, about creating an environment where everyone can contribute their best work. She's proven that when you treat people with respect and trust them to excel, they will exceed even their own expectations." As I accepted the award, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The crushing disappointment of being passed over for promotion had initially felt like the end of my leadership dreams. Instead, it had been the beginning of something much better, a chance to discover what kind of leader I really was, and to find an environment where that leadership style could flourish. Looking out at the audience of colleagues and industry professionals, I realized that David Chen's assessment had been both completely wrong and ultimately valuable. He had been wrong about my potential, wrong about what effective leadership looked like, and wrong about what clients and employees really wanted. But his dismissal had forced me to examine my own beliefs, to find my authentic voice, and to seek out an environment where I could prove that there was more than one way to be a successful leader. The scared, defeated woman who had left Richardson Financial was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true strength came from empowering others, that real leadership meant creating something bigger than yourself, and that the best revenge against those who underestimate you is not proving them wrong, but proving yourself right. As I held the award and looked out at the faces of people who had believed in me when I had struggled to believe in myself, I smiled. David Chen had been wrong about me not being leadership material. I was exactly the kind of leader the world needed more of, one who understood that the best way to rise was to lift others up along the way.